Hey everybody, this is Brent, back with another edition of Near Mint Musings. Tonight I'm going to tell you a story about Ossie Bluege. Oswald Lewis Bluege was a third baseman for the Washington Senators from 1922 through 1939. He was a member of the Senators' 1924 World Series championship team, and at the time, the franchise's only title before they moved to Minnesota in 1961. He was a career 272 hitter, but he wasn't known for his hitting. He was known for his fielding. He was consistently leading the league in double plays turned by a third baseman. Um, It's pretty fast, has some stolen bases, but his career 961 fielding percentage was at the time one of the highest in baseball. He retired in 1939, and at the time, Calvin Griffin, the longtime player slash manager slash owner of the Senators, would truly gauge all third basemen, past, present, and prospects against Ossie, and said, you know what, that's great, but Ossie could have done that. Or he would use the term Bluege could have done that, or that was very Bluege esque. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the idea. He was the litmus test for fielding third baseman. He retired in 1939, like I said. He then managed in the minors for 2 years. Then he actually coached the Senators for one season from 1941 into 1942. Then he managed the Senators from 43 to 47. So truly a career senator, right? Um, and then in 1948, he was named the team's farm director. And he kept that position until 1958. But let's scroll back to after 1948, so about 1954, I believe. Don't have the date in front of me. Is where this story is actually going to take place. As you can see, and I guess I should have said something. This is a 1933 Gaudi on card autograph. Just a gorgeous card. Oswald Bluege. One of the best, I'll hold this up for you, one of the best fielding third basemen in the American League and big factor in winning the American League championship by the Senators. Doesn't bat 300, but his hits are genuinely timely ones. So just an amazing fielding third baseman. But the story that I want to tell you about is once he ended his career as a player and as a manager and became involved with the Senators farm team. As you can see here, there is the Harmon Killebrew book here, Ultimate Slugger by Steve Oshburner. An amazing book, fantastic book. Obviously, I read it cover to cover, but it's a really good biography of Harmon Killebrew's life and before, during, and after baseball. And one of the stories that I want to tell you about, I was thinking, how am I going to tell this story? And I actually remembered Harmon Killebrew's 1984 acceptance speech, his induction speech into the Hall of Fame. And I'm going to actually, it's in this book, so I'm going to read you an excerpt from his speech that, in Harmon's words, tells the story that I'm trying to tell. So this is Harmon speaking at Cooperstown in 1984. If you'll permit me, I'd like to tell a story that I've told on many occasions, but I think you'll realize why I'm telling this story. I talked to a lot of Major League Scouts, like all these gentlemen up here I've talked to over their formative years. And I had decided at the time to play baseball and football at the University of Oregon. And we had a United States Senator from my hometown by the name of Herman Welker. And Herman Welker was a great friend to Clark Griffith of baseball. And he used to go out to Old Griffith Stadium a lot. Before I continue, if you do know or don't know, Harmon Killebrew grew up in Payette, Idaho, And that's what he's referring to, the state that he was at. And that was Herman Welker was the senator from Idaho at the time. I continue. And he told Mr. Griffith about a young boy out in Idaho he thought could hit the ball pretty well. And I think more than anything else, just to keep Senator Welker quiet, Mr. Griffith sent Ossie Bluege out to see me, who was at the time the farm director for the Washington club at that particular time. A former great third baseman with Washington. And Mr. Bluege came out to that little town in Idaho. He rented a car in Boise and drove through the rain 60 miles to that little town, and it didn't look like we were going to play the ball game that day. It had rained very hard. And I'll never forget that I sat in Mr. Bluege's car and we talked about going to Washington, and the club wanted me to work out for them. And I said, well, I really appreciated that, but I was going to play football and baseball at the University of Oregon. And we talked and talked, and then the skies cleared. And the townspeople there, knowing that a Major League Scout was there, hurriedly got the field in order, and we played that ball game that night. And that night I happened to hit a ball over the left field fence. And I'd been going to that ballpark since I was a small boy and never had seen anyone hit a ball over that left field fence. It was over 408 feet down the left field line. And no one I can recall had ever hit one over there in previous years. And when I hit one that night, Mr. Bluege went out the next morning and stepped it off and immediately called Mr. Griffith, and he said it was 435 feet or so in a beet field, not a potato patch. And he thought that was a pretty good hit for a 17-year-old boy from Idaho. He left the contract in Senator Welker's law office and went back to Washington, and I talked that over with my older brother. My father had passed away by then, and my mother decided that baseball was what I wanted to do with my life, and so I signed the contract. And it was so. And it was through the recommendation of Ossie Bluege that I'm standing here this day. Mr. Bluege is here, and I would like to recognize him. Thank you, Ossie. So that is a really, really cool story, and I kind of almost get a little worked up even reading it to you guys. If it wasn't for this guy, we may not have ever seen this guy. So I personally want to say thank you to Mr. Ossie Bluege for being in the right place at the right time and being that guy that let the world know that in Payette, Idaho, there was a guy named Harmon Killebrew that was waiting to tear up the big leagues. So that's my story, and hope you enjoyed it. This is Brent with Near Mint Musings. Have a good one, everyone.